Everybody knows Lewis Carroll, but not everybody knows the name Charles Dodgson. That was his real name. Lewis Carroll is just a pen name. Charles Dodgson was a successful professor of mathematics at the University of Oxford that wrote a lot of very boring mathematics books and some work in logic, and in addition to that wrote Alice in Wonderland. And that is really the thing that he is most well known for by any child, any adult all over the world. Most people have seen the beautiful movie by Disney of Alice in Wonderland. There are countless other variations. This is really what Charles Dodgson is known for. But that's not the topic that I want to speak about today, because the purpose of these lectures is to help you become better writers and to know English better. And in order to do that, it's not enough to see the movie, not even enough to read Alice in Wonderland. You need to learn more and appreciate the true genius of Charles Dodgson, Lewis Carroll, for English, for the logic of the English language, for the ordering of it, for the humor in which it can be used. If you do that and you spend the time, you will learn a very valuable and a very surprising lesson, to which I will get at the end. My name is Shai Dotan. I'm Associate Professor of International Public Law at the University of Copenhagen Faculty of Law, and the purpose of this series of lectures is to help you improve your English. So, putting aside is respectable but completely meaningless for our purposes, career as a mathematician, let's start to focus on Lewis Carroll, the author. So Lewis Carroll, working as he did in Oxford, has a new dean for his faculty. This dean has a few daughters, and one of his daughters is incredibly fond of Lewis Carroll, and he likes her very, very much. They go on trips next to the river, and Lewis Carroll starts to write for this woman, the girl. She was just a girl, 6 years old, Alice Liddell, a story to keep her entertained. And he starts to write the story, and he paints paintings. He was also quite a good illustrator, and had many, many other interests. And once the story is complete, Alice in Wonderland, it was beginning as Alice in the Underworld, all kinds of other titles were flown around, but eventually we landed on Alice in Wonderland. All his friends told him, you have to publish this. You have to have a real illustrator that does an excellent job, illustrate it well, and it will sell. And it did, incredibly. A lot of the books at the time, we're talking about the Victorian period, the middle of the 19th century, were very, very moralistic. Everything had to have a moral. Everything was designed to educate kids. And here comes Lewis Carroll, and he's starting to play around with ideas. Some of them were kind of quips on his other professors at the university. Some of them were logical tricks. And most of them were just pure humor and fun, and basically making fun of the culture that he's part of. And this is something that he did very, very well. So instead of making poems about how important it is to work and study all the time and be as good a boy and girl as possible, he was playing around with ideas and using humor and using nonsense writing. And this was something that was incredibly successful. The book made him famous over a very short time. And this was, until today, his biggest achievement, the most well-known achievement. Now, what did he do with this fame? He wrote a second book, Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There, which I like even better, personally, than Alice in Wonderland. He uses the same genre, same technique that he invented. The first, Alice in Wonderland was almost the first. Here he does something that is an adaptation of that, and it's even more exciting. And it has chess and card games that go into the topic, and all kinds of interesting logical ideas. So, for example, one of the things that I always remember is the king is looking, one of the characters where he's looking from a looking glass, and he says, I don't see anything. And the other character is saying, you don't see anything? I cannot see anything even from a shorter range. So anything could be 0, or it could be something very, very small, but you cannot see even from a very, very short range. So things like this, like the concept of 0, the concept of a group, all these things that are essential for logic, he knew better than anybody because he was a professor of mathematics and he was a very good logician. So he knew all these things and he integrated them into the writing, and it's very fun to read. I read the books in English, which you should do, and we'll get to that in a second. His English is also very playful, very rich. He invents words, which means he kind of collapses words that exist and makes variations of them. He uses all kinds of very, very colorful and exotic phrases, writes in ways that aspires to be original, that nobody wrote before, and makes fun of famous poems in the Victorian age by changing them in all kinds of ways that have exactly the opposite result or the opposite message of an original poem. And if you read, so I read it in English, and I also read it in Hebrew in a special edition that came up with the best translators and the best commentators. So the book had very, very long footnotes. If you find the footnotes, obviously if you can do it in English, it's even better. Try to read that also. See what are the jokes that he's making about other professors, other disciplines. Learn about the history. This will make the experience even better. But if you just read those books as regular books, you would also enjoy it quite a lot. Now, let's say that you've read that. What I recommend for you to do is buy an anthology of all the work of Lewis Carroll. Try to find the most comprehensive anthology possible. Why do I say that? Because Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass you can find in any other shop. It's not a problem. You can look it on Amazon and get it. But if you want to find the other interesting things that he wrote, it's good to read them in an anthology. So in this anthology you will find a lot of poems. He wrote very, very nice poems. Some of them are not amazing works of art, but they are just playful and interesting and great, and I had a lot of fun learning from them and writing variations of them. I really enjoyed that. All kinds of logical games that he has, logical stories like about Achilles and the turtle is a famous one. Long poems that sometimes were published as books already in his time, like The Hunting of a Snark. So also this will give you a lot of extra material to appreciate his style, in addition to reading what everybody's reading. So Alice in Wonderland. So Alice in Wonderland first, then Through the Looking Glass, to get really into this genre, but what I consider to be an even superior piece, and then as many other poems as you can. You don't have to read the whole anthology cover to cover. If you find that some kind of a logical game is too difficult, just jump over and read the poems that you find more interesting and more suitable for you. And then I want you to read something else if you find that the style appealing to you. He wrote later in life 2 other books, 2 volumes of the same idea, Sylvia and Bruno. And he writes in the introduction that several decades ago I wrote Alice in Wonderland, a style that was never used before. Nobody ever used this particular genre that I invented. Now everybody's trying to do the same, so I want to do something new. And he tries to do something new. He tries to write a story that basically is about a boy and a girl, and they're partly existing in a fairy tale world and partly in a real world. And I actually enjoyed these books. I don't remember much of them, but I think I enjoyed reading them very much. They were not very commercially successful. Not many people heard of them, and that's what you need an anthology for, because it would be difficult to buy them separately. So if you read the anthology and you read Sylvia and Bruno, the other poems, and of course the classics, Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass, then you've covered this corpus of writing that this genius has created, Lewis Carroll. As I said, very rich language, inventing words, using words exotically, every time trying to do something that is original and was never done before. This is his signature trait. And why should you read Lewis Carroll so carefully? And not just Alice in Wonderland, but a lot of his other work. In addition to the fact that I think you will find it very enjoyable to do so. Why should you do that? Because you are supposed to do exactly the opposite than what he does as writers, especially as writers who are beginners. So read and avoid. I don't want to sound very negative, but this is a very negative statement and it has a reason. Now let me explain why I say that from the beginning. When you start to learn English as a second language or a third language, there is a point in which you feel the beauty of a language and you feel that you've acquired a large and a growing vocabulary. This is an intoxicating feeling. You feel incredible power in your hands in a way. And what most people do as beginners is they start to use these assets that they acquired without proper discretion. So you would use overly complicated words, rare words, words that are now out of use. You would use words not in a proper meaning, trying to basically pour a new meaning into the word in a variety of ways. Sometimes you would even invent words like Lewis Carroll did. And this is something that is a recipe for bad writing. Your ability to communicate when you're still a beginner using these complicated, rare, out of use words will be significantly hindered. And, which is something that I think is even more important, your ability to think using the language clearly will also be damaged. One of the things that I notice, I'm really trying to put a finger on a phenomena that I see in my students, that I explored on myself when I was in this stage. What you see is basically a situation where you start to use words where you're not exactly sure what they mean. And you go something like, well, this word could mean option A, it could also mean option B. I'm okay with both of them. Let the reader decide. That's very bad. That's very, very bad. If you don't know what you're saying, you're not saying much. You're not helping your readers and you're not helping your thinking process. I'm not saying that you always do it in such an easy and transparent way like I've just described it. It's not always as easy, but you pick up a text that you wrote many years ago as a beginner and you say, what was I thinking? Did I really mean what this word is supposed to mean? Did I really mean it in that context? That's exactly what I want you to try to avoid. So, how can Lewis Carroll help you? Lewis Carroll helps you by showing to you how difficult it is to play around with a language. Okay, when you appreciate how much you need to know, how high is the level of sophistication you need to know to move from a mistake to a joke, then you're going to realize, again, completely subconsciously, it's not like you have to every iteration of reading this, now I know that I'm not able to make this kind of joke. No, but you will learn it. Intuitively. You will just see, okay, so that's what it takes to make up a new word in the English language. I don't have it yet, so I'm just not going to do it. I'm going to use words that exist, and I'm going to prefer words that are short, precise. The great teachers of the English language, Les Strunk and White, say prefer words that are Germanic in origin. These are usually the words that have more force in them. Okay, so if you say something like sanguine, we can know about the word sang, which is blood in French. So this is more Normannic or Latin origin. Sanguine can mean bloody, but it can also mean cheerful. If you say the word bloody, like Blut in German, this is a very, very strong and a very particular word. So if you have a discussion inside your head, when you have to make a statement, what word should I use? A word that is longer, more rarely used, more likely to be of a Latin origin, or a word that is powerful, short, punchy, Germanic origin. I would usually choose the second kind. That's exactly what you do. So it sounds less sophisticated. There's less letters to manipulate because it's shorter words. There's less games that are going around in your head. But your writing will be more concise. It will be clearer. It will be more powerful. And a lot of the lessons that we learn from the great books of style go in this direction. Even if it comes from a different direction. For example, we are told do not write in a passive voice. Okay? If you don't write in a passive voice, you automatically end up writing shorter words, less words, and more powerful statement. Okay? You don't try to make passive constructions. So all these things go together to making you better writers that are writing concisely and clearly and powerfully. Now, I don't want to appear completely negative. I'm not saying that you should just learn Lewis Carroll or that you should avoid his style. I think that you can learn from him slowly, also how to integrate into your style some of the beauty of his writing and some of the passion that goes into it, of playing around with the language. I will say to a metaphor, if you Google the most common tips of writing, there's a phrase that always stays with me. And there's a phrase that says, kill your darlings. I didn't make it up. It's a common phrase in writing. It says, kill your darlings. What does it mean? If you find a phrase that you think is absolutely beautiful and absolutely original, erase it. Erase it because probably you don't have what it takes to make it work. That's why you get so enthusiastic about it. You would not be enthusiastic if you would be sure that you know what it means and you know how to make it work. It looks exotic to you because it's not certain enough in your head. So it's not for you. So erase it. I don't support this technique for the longer run as a writer. But if the phrase is they say is kill your darlings, don't kill your darlings, but clothe them, feed them, educate them, play with them, let them grow before you send them to work in the world. Okay, just like you do with kids. The kids need to grow. So you also need to grow as a writer, and also your brainchilds, your ideas need to grow, they need to develop. They are not ready at the start. And this always try to think about this technique that I mentioned, to say, am I sure what I want to say here? Or am I acknowledging 2 or 3 options that are all possible and I'm okay with them because I'm too lazy to decide? Okay, if I'm sure what I want to say, then you can take it on and apply it in your writing. So that's why I think reading Lewis Carroll as a beginner, as a non-native speaker English is very important. It will give you this immunization that you would say, every time that I get this enthusiasm about writing word games and puzzles and new words and all kinds of very, very original ideas, I would say, I've been there before, I know what it takes to do it well, and I will not do it until I have what it takes. Okay? I don't mean by that I will not use anything exotic for the next 10 years. I mean, you take it on a case-by-case basis. So when you're writing, even if you, as a beginner, slowly infuse the level of creativity and diversity that you need inside your writing. And the best way to get ready for that is getting this into your immune system, a huge dose of originality and passion and playful with games, and this is something that Lewis Carroll does better than anybody. So I recommend to you Don't limit yourself to Alice in Wonderland. Read as much as you can as Lewis Carroll, but then try to reflect on your own writing and see what you can learn from this that will make you a better writer.